Okay, so top 20 offensive players in this year's draft. And the order I'm doing this in is really just where would I draft them? So how highly would I draft them? So I am taking positional value into account here. On top of this, I should also bring up that I'm not including quarterbacks on this list. I was going to, but then I realized like because of the positional value, I had like my top 6 picks were all quarterbacks. So I said, okay, well, we won't include quarterbacks here. We'll just talk about everyone else. And I already talked about all these guys and broke it down into detail on my podcast that was on Monday. So definitely check that one out if you haven't already. And yeah, without further ado, let's just get into it, starting off with number 20. I'm going with Rhamondre Stevenson. The name's a little bit difficult, but Stevenson is a very interesting prospect. He's a big guy. He's a big halfback. He's 6 feet tall and just under 250 pounds. So he's got a very unique body type, which sometimes when I'm talking about guys that I want to have on my team, sometimes, especially on offense, get someone who's unique. Get someone who can do something that not many other guys can do, because then as a defense, you have to react to that. You know, defenses react. So if you have someone who's unique, now that can be a real advantage. And he is someone who, despite his size, I think that he can move pretty well. I compared him to Mike Tolbert just because that's kind of the role I could see him taking. I do think that he's worth a draft pick. I would say everyone on this list is at least worth a second round pick given the right situation, and he fits that mold for me. Number 19, Dyami Brown. Listen, I think that there's a lot to really like about this player. I've heard him get compared to Antonio Brown. I think that's disrespectful to Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown was the best receiver in the league for several years, so I'm not sure if I'd quite go that far just yet. And an issue I brought up is I do feel like he gets too many of his yards using speed on a go route, which given that he runs a 4.46, 40, which is good, but it's not great. I don't know if he'll be able to continue to do that in the NFL. So that's kind of a concern. How are you going to get your yards? But you know what? He does have really good footwork and really good hips. So I could see him still being able to be an effective player. He's number 19 on this list. Number 18, Brevin Jordan. Listen, there's a lot to like about him. Honestly, he kind of feels a little bit more like a fullback than he does a tight end. But you know what? He is very athletic. And especially for his size, he can block really well because he's only 6'3". That's the biggest concern you'll have. He can make a catch too. I do feel like he's more of a blocking tight end, but you know what? That has value. And the reason why I have him this high is because it feels like he is a very, high ceiling, or excuse me, high floor kind of guy where you know where he's going to probably at least be a decent player. He'll probably fit your offense pretty well. So even if it's not necessarily the most important piece you can get, at least it's a piece that you've pretty much gotten when you draft. So I think there's real value in that. He's at 18 here. Number 17, Alijah Vera-Tucker, who actually didn't make my top 5 offensive lineman list, which means I have not just 5 guys, and actually not just 6. I'm going to have 7 total offensive linemen out of my top 20, which kind of goes to show, again, positional value. It matters. Alijah Vera-Tucker's good though. He really is. His footwork is a clear issue, and also, people will talk about the arm length not super long, but he still is 6'4", and he's just a strong guy, and that's really what it comes down to. Is he has the strength to make it work. So while I do worry he can get beat with speed a little bit because of the footwork issue, which isn't a huge issue, but it could be better for sure. I do think that he is someone who's worth taking a flyer on because the sky is the limit. And again, you can't teach strength, and he has strength. Next up, I have Dillon Radnuz, who I've seen him listed at anywhere from 6'3" to 6'6". I'm a little confused about that. But either way, he's a little bit skinnier, and he played in Division I AA with North Dakota State. So the real issue with him is just that, how much do I really trust how well he can play given the competition that he's had to go up against. And he's not the best run blocker, and I do worry he can get beat by faster edge guys just because I haven't really seen that yet. But the reality is his tape looks really good, so he's a wild card for me. He's certainly someone I could see being a boom. I could see him being a bust. He can move pretty well though, so and has good arm length. I think that it really my clear issue with him is mostly just I just haven't seen him play against good enough talent. He did look well in the Senior Bowl, so maybe that's some hope there. But yeah, big question mark. Really, high boom or bust potential with him. Next up, we have Pat Freiermuth, who is 6'5" and 260 pounds. So gotta like the size. He's a tight end. I need to make sure I keep listing what the positions are because people might get confused. But yeah, good tight end. People have compared him. I believe his nickname is like Baby Gronk, which, listen, it's a lot to live up to, really putting yourself in a bit of a bind with that nickname. And, he's not very fast. I don't know his 40. It's not going to be a good 40. I don't think he ran it. So there's an issue. He has the injury, but you know what? He's also not the best blocker for his size, but you just see him. He just has this way to get open. He just has this ability to find ways to get open. He's a really good route runner. He is someone who's hard to bring down in open space. That's kind of how you get the Baby Gronk moniker type thing. So there's a lot to like about him. And I think there's some stuff to dislike about him, but to me, he is a tight end I would draft here. Number 14, back to offensive line, Teven Jenkins. He is another guy who's sort of big, maybe a little bit skinnier, not quite as skinnier as Radnuz. So there's that. And you could argue a little bit small hands, but he can play left and right tackle. He has good hands. He has good feet, not as good as some of the other guys, but still very good. And really what I like about him is that he's a good pass blocker. So again, when you want to tackle, you should draft a pass blocker. He's someone who can be a good pass blocker, so that's what I like about him. Next, we have Travis Etienne, who is a very interesting halfback. He is here at 13. There's a lot I like about him, too. I mean, again, he's just someone he's a complete back. He has very good acceleration. He's a good pass catcher as well. A good comp could be kind of like a Ronald Jones, but one that can actually do the other stuff, such as, run routes, pass catch, and, block. Whereas, Ronald Jones, very good runner, but that's kind of it. Well, you now have a back who can do more. So if you're looking for that kind of thing, he's definitely someone who you might want. And number 12, Najee Harris, who, again, I feel like you could argue either one of these guys if you want. I like Harris a little bit better. I think he's a better blocker, which is something I really value with halfbacks. I think it's very underrated, but a guy who can block really matters to me a lot. He has good vision, great east and west movement. He's also just big, 6'2", 230. You like to see that. So he's just someone who's a very good back. He is my favorite back in this draft. The only reason he's where he is just because he's a halfback and positional value matters. So after him, I really am getting to the guys who I really just feel like are good prospects who I think are going to be starters. Like number 11, we have Rashod Bateman, wide receiver. He's 6'2", but still runs a sub 4.4 40-yard dash. It's 4.39, but still very good. So the speed and the size, that's really what you like about him. And he can play a 1 or a 2. There's really not a lot to dislike about him. And so I think it just goes to show the wide receiver talent in this draft that I have him as where I have him, because I'm a big fan of his game. He's really good. Absolutely go out and draft him. We're now in the top 10, and we're back to offensive line. Rashawn Slater, tackle. He's a little bit short. He's 6'3", which for a tackle, that's short. It's obviously tall for a person, but he gets up to the second level very well. He's a really good run blocker. His speed just as a whole is fantastic, and everyone talked about he shut down Chase Young in that one game. He's worth a top 10 offensive pick. I still haven't done defense yet, so top 20 probably overall. But I think this draft is more lopsided towards offense, and that might be really worth top 15 or maybe even better. So great footwork. Again, the size, he doesn't necessarily use his strength as much, which is what I value a little bit more, but still a lot to like here about Slater. Sticking with offensive line, we're going to a center here, Landon Dickerson. He's my only non-tackle on this list. He's giant, though, for a center. He looks like he would be a tackle. He's 6'6", 325 pounds. So big center. He's really strong. His footwork is fine. It's not really what you would expect from a center. It almost feels like he plays the wrong position or something, but he's just someone who he seems like a can't-miss prospect. And while I don't think a center is as important as a tackle, I just think he's a better prospect than some of these other tackles, which is why I have him here. And number 8, we're sticking with offensive line. Christian Darrisaw here, tackle. Again, huge arms, 34 and a half arm. I mean, that's a great measurement. He's incredibly strong. Part of me worries if he could get beat by speed in the NFL. It wasn't a major problem in the NFL, but it wasn't a major problem in college, but I could potentially see it coming into play a little bit. He was a bit slow, but again, the long arms and the strength are going to help with that. I just feel like he kind of sometimes relied on that a bit too much. So he might have a little bit of a learning curve once he gets to the NFL, which is to be expected with rookies. And he's maybe not necessarily the most agile, but he's agile enough. And he's so strong that I think that he's worth a top 8 offensive pick. Number 7, I'm going Devonta Smith here. Yes, Devonta Smith, the reigning Heisman, is only number 7 here on the offense. And also, I keep saying someone's worth like a top 7 offensive pick. That doesn't make sense because I didn't include quarterbacks, so I don't know why I keep saying that. But yeah, listen, this is one of those hot takes that everyone's going to freak out about. And I like him. There's a lot to like about him. He reminds me a little bit of how I evaluated Bateman in a sense, where it's like, there's not really a lot to dislike about him. I just think there's other guys who are better. So he does a lot really well. Obviously, he won a Heisman. And I don't dislike the player whatsoever. I just think there's better players on the board, such as number 6, Terrace Marshall, another wide receiver who, when I watch this guy, I'm watching Justin Jefferson. Like I just can't stop seeing that. I doubt he'll become Justin Jefferson because just because you look like Justin Jefferson doesn't mean you'll become him. Part of it is, literally the same offense that, it's LSU's offense, but he was there's one game in particular where clearly the strategy was just get the ball to Marshall because he's our guy. He's our only chance of winning this game. And he nearly led them to victory on a game they had no business winning. He has speed. His route running is really what reminds me of Jefferson. The over-the-middle routes that Jefferson's so good at, Marshall is just as good at. He's a fast receiver, runs a sub 4.4. It's 4.38. And he also is 6'3". So there's just so much to like about him. I have to put him up here. Number 5, we're keeping with the hot takes. Listen, Ja'Marr Chase, again, he's a great player. He's top 5 on my list. I wouldn't put him, honestly, I wouldn't put him top 5 if I didn't feel that it was there. I'm not afraid to be more down on a player than other people think. But at the end of the day, there is some concerns here. I mean, let's just be honest. Everyone keeps talking about how explosive he is and how fast he is. Well, he ran a 4.38. And again, all these times I'm talking about are pro day times, which are probably a little bit show a little bit faster than they actually are. So he is explosive. That acceleration really does work, but he needs to improve his route running, in my opinion, and for him to really be able to be successful. Yes, he is great at these contested catches, but how well does that work in the NFL? How much does that translate to the NFL? Same thing with how he can, juke and make guys miss. To me, a lot of times when I see these moves, I'm not sure if an NFL defensive back falls for it the same way college defensive backs do. And that concerns me. And also, yes, he does play big, but he is still 6 feet tall. So 6 feet tall, not the fastest, but there is a lot he does really well, specifically contested catches. And so that's what I like about him. And again, he has great footwork and great hips. He just doesn't really use it the way I would want him to use it. So maybe you can get him to put it all together. He's still a young guy. There's a lot to like about him, but I just think there's 4 players who I like more than him. One of those is number 4, Jaylen Waddle. The only real issue I have with Waddle, they're kind of, honestly, Waddle and Chase are kind of opposite of prospects. And quite frankly, I probably should mention right here that I just value different things in wide receivers than I think other people do. Like, to me, I care a lot about how you can route run and how you can get open, get separation, whereas it seems like a lot of other people care more about like contested catches and things of that nature. So that's probably an issue, probably a big reason why I'm more high on Waddle than some people are, and why some people are higher on Chase than I am. So stuff like that. Really what I love about Waddle is his route running is fantastic. He has great speed, great footwork. There's just, my only real issue with him is he sometimes tries to make too many moves, which can get him in trouble. And obviously sometimes failing to make a tough catch, but he will make the ones that are right there. So honestly, reminds me a lot of Jerry Jeudy a little bit, who I was a big fan of, and I still am a fan of, although he does need to clean up on drops. So there's definitely some similarities there. Waddle, only 5'10", 183 pounds. That's, a bit small, but still, I'm fine with it. I think he's worth a top 4 selection on this list. Number 3, I do have Kadarius Toney here at 3. Yes, he is my top wide receiver. I know everyone's freaking out about that, saying like, what are you talking about? How do you have him ahead of Waddle and Chase and Smith and Marshall? Like, what are you thinking? But again, watch his tape. His tape is just unbelievable. He reminds me of a slightly slower Tyreek Hill. Like, that's what he reminds me of, which is, not quite Tyreek Hill, but still really good. Potentially, he could be a top receiver in this league, I think. His shiftiness is just insane. The way he can move, his footwork, and when sometimes you see a guy make a college player miss and you say, okay, well, that worked on that play, but won't work out in the NFL. His moves are unlike any I've ever seen, including NFL players. It's incredible. And so with that, his route running is now incredible. So he has great route running, so light on his feet. And honestly, people are talking about his frame for some reason, but he's 6 feet tall, 194 pounds. That's what he's listed at. So same height as Ja'Marr Chase, only 10 pounds lighter. And I think he plays bigger than that too. I think he plays big. I almost wonder if just being next to Kyle Pitts a lot makes people think you're smaller than you are. But I don't know what people are missing here with Toney. I think that he is an absolute star in the making. And I think that whoever gets him late in the first round is going to be very happy with what he ends up doing. Number 2, what's there to be said about Kyle Pitts that hasn't already been said? He's 6'6". He has great footwork. He's incredibly fast. And I think he's an underrated blocker too. He can go up and make a catch. He can run routes. There's so much well. The only real issue I have with him is I sometimes feel like he might rely on physicality a bit too much, kind of tries to push off a little bit too much, which, that happens with tight ends, but still, it's really hard not to fall in love with this prospect. Even me, who I love hot takes, I can only have one guy ahead of him because obviously I think that guy is even better. And that guy is Penei Sewell, which I just think this is he's just so good. I mean, the way that he can move at he's 6'6", 331, and he moves like he's 290. He didn't play at all in 2020. So all this tape that we're watching at, which is some of the best tape I've seen from an offensive lineman in college, he did at 19 years old. Like that's just, that breaks my brain. I don't understand how that's possible. He's just someone that you have to find a way to draft, I think. Like the idea of Cincinnati saying, should we draft Chase or should we draft Sewell? You draft the superstar offensive lineman, I think. But that's just my opinion. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. What are your thoughts of this list? I'm sure you're going to hate it because every list gets hated on, but you know what? That's my list. I gave my reasoning and I got into more detail on my podcast. So if you're a little bit more confused, feel free to check that out. I did rankings by positions there instead of by just top 20 in a vacuum. So check that out. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.